The music was already loud when Daniel stepped into the hall, but it wasn't the music that made his chest tighten, it was the laughter. Couples spun across the dance floor, hands linked, eyes shining. Daniel stayed near the wall, fingers hooked into the pockets of his worn jacket, watching the world move without him and wondering when life had decided to leave him standing still. He hadn't planned to come. After 12 hours at the garage and a rushed dinner with his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, he was tired in a way that sleep didn't fix. But Lily had begged him to attend the community fundraiser dance. "Please, Dad," she'd said, eyes wide with hope. "You used to dance with Mom." That last part had landed like a quiet ache. Daniel had kissed her forehead, promised he'd try, and now here he was, alone, again. 3 years earlier, dancing had meant everything. It was how he and his wife, Emily, used to laugh away bad days, barefoot in the living room while Lily clapped along. Then Emily got sick. Then the house grew quiet. Since her funeral, Daniel's life had shrunk into responsibilities, lunches packed, bills paid, bedtime stories read through a tight throat. He was proud of the father he'd become, but somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten how to be anything else. Across the floor, a woman laughed, her joy impossible to ignore. She wore a simple dress and moved without trying to impress anyone, like music belonged to her. Daniel noticed others noticing her, yet she didn't rush into any arms. She seemed to be taking in the room, seeing people. When her eyes landed on Daniel, he looked away instinctively, embarrassed by the attention. A single dad in scuffed shoes wasn't exactly dance floor material. He checked his phone, a habit born of discomfort. A message from Lily waited there. "Did you get there safe? Did you dance yet?" Daniel smiled despite himself and typed back, "I'm watching for now." He slipped the phone away and sighed, wondering if watching was all he'd ever do. That's when he heard her voice. "Hi," she said softly, standing close enough that he could smell something warm and familiar, like vanilla and rain. "Would you like to dance?" Daniel blinked, convinced he'd misheard. He looked around, certain she was talking to someone else. When he looked back at her, she was smiling, patient and kind, not rushed or amused. "Just asking." I don't really dance," he said, the truth feeling heavy on his tongue. She tilted her head. "That's okay. I do." There was no pity in her eyes, no pressure. Just an open hand. Daniel hesitated, feeling the old fear crawl up his spine. If he said yes, he'd be seen. If he said no, he'd stay safe but invisible. He thought of Lily's hopeful face, of Emily's laughter, of the men he used to be. "All right," he said quietly, taking her hand. The floor felt crowded as they stepped onto it, and for the first few seconds, Daniel was painfully aware of everything, his stiff shoulders, his unsure steps, the curious glances of strangers. His heart pounded like it wanted to run. She noticed. "Just breathe," she said, close enough that only he could hear. "You don't need to impress anyone." They moved slowly at first. Daniel followed her lead, clumsy but trying. Once, he nearly stepped on her foot, and instead of pulling away, she laughed, a soft, genuine sound that eased something tight in his chest. The music seemed to soften, or maybe it was just that Daniel stopped fighting it. "I'm Daniel," he said after a moment. "I'm Sophia," she replied. "I'm glad you said yes." He wanted to ask why she'd chosen him, out of all the people in the room, but the question felt too fragile. Instead, he let himself feel the simple miracle of moving again. Not perfectly. Not effortlessly. But honestly. They danced through one song, then another. With each passing minute, Daniel felt lighter. Memories surfaced, not the painful ones, but the good ones. Emily's smile. Lily spinning in her pajamas. Joy that didn't disappear just because grief existed too. When the music slowed, Sophia stepped back, still holding his hand. "Thank you," she said. "You look like someone who carries a lot." Daniel swallowed. I have a daughter. Lost my wife a few years ago." He hadn't planned to say it, but it came out anyway, raw and real. Sophia's expression softened, not with sadness but understanding. "I'm sorry. That kind of love doesn't go away." "No," Daniel said. "It doesn't." They talked after that, about Lily, about Sophia's work at the library, about how hard it was to start again when life changed without permission. There was no rush, no promises. Just two people sharing space honestly. Later that night, as Daniel drove home, he replayed the moment she'd asked him to dance. How one small choice had shifted something deep inside him. He hadn't stopped being a single dad. He hadn't escaped his responsibilities or his grief. But for the first time in a long while, he hadn't let them define the limits of his life. When he tucked Lily into bed, she asked, "So, did you dance?" Daniel smiled, real and wide. "Yeah," he said. "I did." She grinned sleepily. "See? I knew you could." As Daniel turned off the light, he realized the night hadn't been about romance or music or even dancing. It had been about allowing himself to be chosen, to be seen, and to step forward instead of staying on the sidelines. Sometimes, life doesn't change because we're ready. It changes because someone reaches out a hand, and we finally decide to take it.